All right, well, thank you, Brian. I did notice that Tim was sitting up here next to General Counsel, and he only looks that nervous and sits that close when Brian and Joe take the microphone. Let me just tell you that. And Tim told me he's got the forms where I can file my complaints. They were next to him, so I'll take care of that later. Guys, you got a great chief engineer in Brian Taylor, and I have a unique perspective in that I can say what I want about Brian, and I worked for him. He was a mentor of mine, so I'll just take just a second and give a little bit of credit, and probably, I don't want to take a lot of time because I know Brian gave a pretty good keynote address here this morning. But I want to say one particular thing that I learned from Brian Taylor, and that is that you can have a good time at work. It's okay to have a good time. It's okay to be serious when you need to be serious, but it's okay to have a good time at work. And you should be able to have a little bit of fun. As I've moved through my career, those fun times get a little bit further in between sometimes, and sometimes you wonder if there's going to be another fun time. I've run into that a little bit here over the course of the last 7 years. But I'm not really counting it that much. But I'm really proud to be here today. I'm going to do something a little bit different. The last couple of years that I've talked to ACEC, we've kind of given an update on the Access program. I know that's what most folks really care about, and I'm a little bit surprised to see this many people here when we have that much work that needs to be done. But I know that some of you will be leaving here as soon as I finish, because that's what you came here for, right? I'm just kidding. Oh, somebody clapped. It's Joe Davis in the back, so. Okay, so I do have a PowerPoint. Is that what I'm supposed to do? Does it show up there? It's not yet. It is now. Okay. Yep, so that's me. All right, so I want to answer one of the main questions, or at least try to answer it. And I know that Director Gatz answers this a lot, and Brian touched on it just a little bit, but I want to talk about why do we have turnpikes in Oklahoma? Why do we still have them? Why are we going to continue to have them, or at least in my opinion, why? So we have the 14th, best I could tell based on some lane miles, pulled that off the internet, we have the 14th largest transportation system by state in the country. And we're not a small state, we're a big state, we're pretty spread out. We have the 28th largest population, so we're on the bottom half of population, trying to support the top half of transportation with one of the lowest motor fuel taxes in the country. And there are people in here that drive very fuel efficient vehicles, and some of us and some other folks maybe in here that own a few vehicles that aren't so fuel efficient. This morning, just happened to have this ironic story, but this morning I left the house to head to work. My son just turned 14 a couple weeks ago and got his farmer's exemption driver's license, which is a little bit strange to have a 14-year-old full-fledged being able to drive himself to school. But he drives a 1992 GMC short-wide Z71 with a 350 engine in it, 192,000 miles, got glass packs. It sounds awesome. But today, he's only been driving for a few weeks. Over the course of the last couple weeks, we talked about how to calculate fuel mileage, how to calculate your price per mile, what he is paying to drive that vehicle. And this morning, he filled it up, and we got to run a few calculations. He is getting, and he's very ginger, he's very cautious. Got lots of people around town keeping an eye on him. So I know he's not gunning it too much, but he's getting about 13 miles per gallon. And he only drives about 55, because if he goes any faster than that, the transmission starts to slip. We'll work on that. But he goes about 55 miles an hour, and he is getting about 13 miles to the gallon. And he is paying significantly more than most of you in this room per mile into the transportation system than most of you are, because most of you drive a vehicle that gets better than 13 miles a gallon. There's probably some people in here who get 40 or 50 miles a gallon. There's some people in here who plug it into a plug, and I don't even know how to calculate all of that. My point is that motor fuel tax, when it was super fair to everybody a long time ago, it's not so much anymore. The reason he doesn't drive a vehicle that gets 23 or 24 or 48 miles per gallon is because he doesn't have a whole lot of money, right? And I wasn't going to put him in a really nice vehicle for his first vehicle. Let's be a little bit honest there. But he's paying a whole lot more into motor fuel tax, and the folks who don't have a brand new vehicle are doing that. The Turnpike Authority charges per mile for what you drive, which, by the way, the farm license that he has restricts him from driving on the interstate or turnpikes in the state of Oklahoma. So he doesn't even get to drive on that one. That's probably okay by Dad here. But that's the reason that the Turnpike Authority leverages, let me make sure I've got this here. That's the reason the Turnpike Authority leverages the network, and we are able to extend ODOT's resources, the tax resources across the state. More and more states are getting some type of toll. Whether it's a road user charge, you want to call it a road user charge, you can. You want to call it a per mile charge, you sure can. To drive the Turners, about a nickel a mile. To drive the Kilpatricks, about 11 cents a mile. The rest of our Turnpike network is about that, 5 to 6 cents a mile on the rural ones, 11 to 12 cents a mile on the urban ones, depending on the length that you drive, but that's the average. And across the country, there are a lot of states that have some form of tolling. In Oklahoma, we have 12 toll roads, all operated by the Turnpike Authority. In Texas, they have, best I can tell, or at last count, I think 24 tolling authorities in the state of Texas, and that's why they're darker on here. Florida has 4 or 5, I think, and California has several. So the darker the state, the more tolls that they have. We are proud in our state to have a very low motor fuel tax. We're also proud in our state to have a very low toll rate. So here we're showing that it's around 6 cents a mile compared to the national average that's closer to 22 cents a mile. And that number was pulled probably recently or in the last year. And I'm telling you, we haven't raised tolls, and I'm sure some other tolling entities have. They haven't reduced them with the inflationary costs. So I'm sure that there is even more separation to that today. We've got you may have heard that the state auditor is doing the very first state audit of the Turnpike Authority. That is ongoing right now. We are having just about monthly and even weekly sometimes meetings and touch bases with them as we provide them with documents and answer some of the questions that they have. And one of their questions that they most recently asked was, where is the main rule that you have that tells you what is the main KPI rule that you have that tells you you're doing a good job or that you have to live by? And I'm telling you, it's this. If our tolls were too high in this state, we wouldn't exist, right? Your legislators, your elected officials would make sure of that. But we do a really, really good job, and it's been managed very, very well over the course of the last 70 years to have a network that's very diverse, carries a lot of traffic, collects a ton of money. Basically, the debt service that we pay in bonds is paid by all out-of-state motorists that come into our state. So, this is our biggest deciding factor. When we raise tolls, and we will, the Turnpike Authority is going to have to deliver this access program and to make up for some of the inflation that's occurred just in our regular routine maintenance and operation. This will be the thing that we continue to measure ourselves by. Where do we fit into the national average? There are toll roads, like our neighbor down here in Texas, that are dollars per mile certain times of the day. The managed lanes right outside of Dallas, I've been told that they go to $54 to go 10 miles during certain times of the day. And I asked a few people who drive that, and they said, if it's $54, you better take it. Because if you want to go the other way, it's going to take you 5 hours. You're going to get stuck in traffic. So we're very proud of the network that we have. We're working really, really hard not to have congestion on it, and it's something that we take very, very serious. Another thing that I hear people say from time to time is, well, there's no traffic in Oklahoma. I drove in a little bit today. I was on the Turner, and I got held up going 65 for a little while, stuck behind a couple semi-trucks jockeying for position, which just drives me nuts. We're 6 lane in that bad boy, so ain't going to raise the speed limit when we do. I got on the Kilpatrick. I took the Kilpatrick to Hefner Parkway down to 40, or down to 44, down to 40, and then over. And I was in a little bit of traffic everywhere. But when I hear people say that, well, I'm from somewhere else and they have congestion and we don't, I take that as a pretty major compliment, and everybody that works in this office or that's in this room that works on transportation-related projects, helps us with planning, gathering data, should take a little bit of credit in that. We have a tremendous population, a lot of people coming through and driving through our state, and we don't have a whole lot of traffic. That's because of really good planning that occurred back in the 80s, back before that. Neil McCaleb, Gary Ridley, Mike Patterson, Tim Gatz, just to name a few, in recent times that have helped prepare our state for the population growth, for the economic growth that's brought jobs and brought developments into our state. So I'm proud when somebody says we don't have a whole lot of traffic. That's what we're trying to do, trying to work to keep it like that. Keep your travel time reliability high so that you can get where you're needing to go. Here's the turnpike system as we have it today in our state and the years that those roads were open. You'll see the Turner Turnpike opened in 1953. Yes, when it was open in 1953, the promise was that when the bonds were paid off, it turned into a state-supported road. That is a true statement. In 1954, by referendum vote, the people said, hey, I want a 4-lane divided highway in my neck of the woods, and in order to do that, we cross-pledged. So that's the reason that our system is the way it is. One of these deals coming up tells you where your money goes, and I'll get to that in a second, but here's a handful of statistics about OTA. We have 12 turnpikes. We do 14 million monthly transactions. That's higher in the summer, lower in the winter. We have 1.1 million active Pike Pass accounts with 3.4 million active Pike Passes in circulation. Some of our Pike Pass accounts will have several hundred Pike Passes associated with it. Think of fleets and semi-trucks and trucking companies that operate within our state. We only have 630 miles of road. I need to get updated numbers, but something like we have 7% of the miles, and I think we carry 11% of the daily miles driven in the state or on turnpikes, something like that. So we have a small number of highways, but we carry a whole lot of the main traffic because we span from Joplin, Missouri to Wichita Falls, Texas. We carry a lot of truck traffic that drive the full length of several of our turnpikes. Our call center, when you call 1-800-PIKE PASS, and I hope you do, I hope everybody here has a Pike Pass account. If you don't, come see me afterwards. But if you need one, call 1-800-PIKE PASS. We get 91,000 calls a month. That's the average number for last year. We have 102 interchanges. We have 11 million interoperable transactions, so that's how many people we carry from other states that are driving on our network. We also fund the Highway Patrol to the tune of about 120 troopers. This year and over the course of the last several years, we have funded every trooper academy that has happened since about 2016. So when you see the Highway Patrol having a trooper academy trying to staff up, and they're understaffed right now, that's why you don't see as many as you used to. It's also helped maybe a few people's driving records. But when you don't see as many troopers out on the network, that's because we're trying to help them staff up, and we're paying for additional troop academies whenever you see those that are coming through. They have established that they're going to do 2 next year. They've asked us to participate in that to the tune of about $8 million. And we will be taking that in our budget to our board in a couple of months for approval. But we're trying to provide additional troopers for the entire state through those academies. Here's where OTA's money comes from. You'll notice that we don't have a whole lot of funding sources, and only one of them is major, and that's the tolls. We're not state funded. We don't get any appropriations. About 40% of the revenue comes from out of state, and that's important for that bottom graph, which shows where the money goes, which is into asset preservation mostly, a big chunk. Operations, which includes the Highway Patrol and our operations group, and then the debt service. So if you'll notice, that out-of-state traffic covers the debt service. So we build a road, and you as Oklahomans, if you want to look at it this way, are paying for the operations, the maintenance, the snow and ice, the mill and overlay projects, all of those things. But the debt service to actually build it's being paid by out of state. You're not getting that on the rest of there's not another thing in our state, I think, that measures like that, where somebody from another state is actually paying the debt on it. I just don't think that exists. And if somebody's got an example, bring it to me so I can quit lying at the microphone. Just an interesting graph here that talks about some transactions. So one thing that we are really, really good at is we know exactly how many cars drive on our network, and usually how big they are, how many axles they have, depending on which road they're on. But this distribution is by type. And you'll notice that about almost 80% were pike passes for July. This is just recently after we've gone cashless on the Turner Turnpike and the Indian Nation Turnpike in the last couple of months. So our pike pass distribution, our pike pass transaction count actually went down a little bit, and that's just because our plate pay transactions went up as a percentage. But you'll notice that we're almost all cashless at this point, just a very small amount of cash being collected in July, and that was on the Will Rogers Turnpike up in northeastern Oklahoma. And there's a big chunk that's IOP, so that's interoperability. Those are transactions that are happening in our state that are coming from another state where they have a toll tag somewhere else, whether they're from Colorado, Texas, or Florida, and they have a toll tag. They're driving in Oklahoma, and we're reading them and billing them the pike pass rate back to in their home state. So that works really nice, makes our cost of our network, cost of our transactions a lot lower when we can do that. This is the interoperability map. Most recently, I think in June 4th, June 2nd, something like that, Colorado came online. So now if you get to Colorado and you got to drive E470, making the loop around downtown, trying to get around the airport, around to the airport or something, you can use your pike pass, and it's interoperable with Colorado. We're really happy to have made that connection. We are actively working at OTA. We're leaders in the country in this, by the way, and it's not me. I'm super supportive of the people, but Joni and Amanda and our people that are in IT are leading the country in interoperability, trying to make this from coast to coast that your toll tag in your home state works in every state. The reason that's really, really important to us, more important to us than it is the coastal states, is we carry on every day we see every license plate from every state, even Hawaii. I don't know how they get here, but every day we see every license plate from every state. So we have a ton of transactions, super important to us. Not a whole lot of Oklahomans driving on, some of the toll roads on the East Coast as a percentage compared to here in Oklahoma. So this interoperability is super important to us. Joni and Amanda are big players in that, and we appreciate their work in it. And that's the reason that we attend a lot of meetings having to do with interop, just trying to push this forward and really move the needle. I'm optimistic that this next year we will go live with EasyPass, which will get us basically all the Northeast states, a lot of Canadian vehicles, and that'll further help us minimize our costs in charging tolls. There is a cost to doing the charging. So I included this graphic because I just want to make sure everybody here can answer questions when you get asked, because when you tell people you work on roads or bridges, and especially if you're working on something turnpike related, you usually get a question about how some of this stuff works. So when you drive under a gantry, under one of our toll readers, it either picks up your pike pass and says, that vehicle has a pike pass, no need for that picture, and deletes the picture. Or it says, no pike pass detected, let's see what this picture has in it. From that, from there, the license plate is looked up. So in Oklahoma, if you have an Oklahoma plate, which most folks do, they're probably in this room, we're able to look that up through Service Oklahoma. We have a direct connection with them that gets updated multiple times a day. If you're from Texas and you have a Texas plate, that gets updated once a day, I think. And we're working to have Kansas where that happens once a day automatically. We just download their DMV list, and Oklahoma will share ours with them. And that makes it super cheap for us to be able to look up the license plate. It's pretty reliable. Then we bill off the address that's on your registration. If you move and you don't update your registration, I can't help it that I'm mailing the bill to the wrong place, okay? If you don't forward your mail, and there are people who do not open their mail, believe this or not, that call in and say, I've never received notice, and now you've charged a bunch of late fees. And then while they're on the phone with us, you can hear them fumbling around through mail, and they go, oh, I found it. And that happens all the time. People just don't check their mail, and they definitely don't check it when they know it's a bill, right? So we mail an invoice. After 30 days, we mail another invoice. And usually, like 50 or 60% pay in the first 30 days, and then that number starts to drop as you get further along. There are states, we have no ability to do a registration hold or anything like that in another state. We don't mail bills until it meets a certain threshold, and we're looking at upping what that threshold is before we would mail an invoice, just because there's so many costs to doing all the work around putting an invoice in, printing it, putting it in an envelope, and putting a stamp on it. There's a lot of cost to that. We have multiple different ways that it can be paid. Actually, we've got a QR code on a plate pay invoice, and I took my Pike Pass out because so many people were complaining about this, and I went and drove the Turner. A week later, I got my first plate pay invoice. It's all automated. There's nobody licking the envelope and stamping these things. It's just all happens automatically. Came in the mail. I pulled my phone out, scanned the QR code. It said, here's where you had a transaction. Do you want to pay? Picture my credit card. It took somewhere between 30 and probably 45 seconds, I think, to do the whole thing. And the only reason it took that long is I live in the middle of nowhere, and I don't have good cell service necessarily all the time, and so I think it was a little bit slower than it would be if I was in a more metropolitan area with a little better connection. Even if you don't receive an invoice, we have a place on platepay.com where you can just search by license plate. If you haven't, I would encourage you to get on platepay.com and search your license plate just to make sure you don't have a transaction outstanding someplace. Oh, and while you're there, you ought to look up your neighbor. We actually have, in my family, made a little bit of a game of this. My son, I mentioned he's 14, so we did get him a cell phone, which has been okay. But when he's riding with me in the car and we're driving down the turnpike or driving someplace, once in a while, he'll let me know that he's looked up some license plate we just passed and that they owe us money. Why don't you go get that money from him, Dad? This is usually where I explain we're not an enforcement agency. We're just trying to build some roads and bridges and get them paid for. That's all I'm trying to work on here. But you can get on there and look up your license plate or somebody else's and see if they have a toll bill. We were on the turnpike a few days ago, looked up a license plate, and it had $1,100 in toll charges. Now, if they'll get a Pike Pass, if you call 1-800 Pike Pass and you got this $1,100 charge, right? If you want to open a Pike Pass account, we'll cut that in basically half. So, I mean, our customer service folks really try really hard to make this as seamless as we can for people who are our customers, right? Let's see, I talked about all the different ways to pay. You got a Pike Pass, you can call customer service. We do have an automated phone payment, so if you call in, you don't have to necessarily talk to a person, and that's good. And then we do have locations that accept cash. We get this sometimes, you guys are going cashless, you don't take cash anymore. That's not exactly true. You can pay cash at a few different locations. We've got one at our office, so if you're coming to our office for plan review or something, you're happy to take your cash and put it on your Pike Pass right there. We've got at the tourism's got them in Midwest City and at 122nd and I-35. There are places there that take cash. In Tulsa on I-244 up there at the old and 412 at the old Cherokee Welcome Center. We've taken and are utilizing that building as not only a call center but taken cash at that location. And most recently, and it's not in place yet, but we're working on a location down in McAllister where there's a lot of people who are unbanked and that's been a comment that we've received a lot of lately. You need some place in southeastern Oklahoma that I can put cash on a Pike Pass, so we're working on that next. One in a row. One in a row, that's not funny, I guess. You guys think about it. Okay. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and talk about bonds and bond payments and bond programs. This particular slide outlines the last three bond programs and our current bond program that we're in right now. as well as what was built during those bond programs, and then our current ratings outlook that came from about a year ago. We got rated before we went in the bond market to sell bonds for the ACEC program. We had a stable outlook. Anybody that's in here that's worked with a municipality on selling some bonds or in some infrastructure project knows how thorough that process is. And so we are just a few months away from probably taking another look at this again. We do get bond rated every year just as an update. And most recently, the Gilcrease Expressway got an upgrade. It's carrying so much traffic between 44 on the south end and 412 on the north end that the outlook became more stable. And so that's good for us, because in the event but when we get to build in the northwest corner of Tulsa, in partnership with the city of Tulsa, Osage County, and Tulsa County, it'll be important that we have a good bond rating. That'll help us save some money on interest, which is why our toll rates are low. We try to keep those as low as we can, and again, a high bond rating helps us with that. So most recently, the 2023 start of the bond program, where we sold bonds just almost a year ago, was part of the ACEC program. I'm going to give a quick update on this because we have had some recent things that have happened, and if you haven't visited our website, I'd encourage it. But the list of priorities is there on the left: widening the Turner, widening the Will Rogers up to Claremore, widening the Kilpatrick's, carrying so much traffic. Our traffic increased by like 10% overall in about 2 months after we went cashless on the Kilpatrick. When people realized they didn't have to carry cash with them anymore, it wasn't a big deal to just jump on and jump off. So we started seeing more traffic on the Kilpatrick. Finished the Gilcrease on the northwest side of Tulsa. We've got some plans to add interchanges and redo some of the pavements on the H.E. Bailey, the Cimarron, and the Indian Nation turnpikes. These new interchanges are going to be a huge deal. There are locations, and I know a few people who live just a mile or so from a major turnpike, and they got to go 15 or 20 miles to go get on it. And some of them are in this room, and a couple of them back there. And as soon as we can get some of these interchanges in, I mean, it changes their life dramatically. You gain 5 or 10 minutes back out of every day, out of every trip. I mean, that's a big deal to people. So we're excited about getting some of those new interchanges built. TJ would ask me to mention to everybody we're about to do another solicitation that'll have 4 additional interchanges that we're ready to start design on for the H.E. Bailey, 2 on the H.E. Bailey and 2 on the Indian Nation Turnpike. 1 on the Indian Nation Turnpike. 1 on the Cimarron. Sorry, get my facts straight. That's why I have people here to fact check me while I'm doing it. It makes it really fun to stand up here and get checked. So 2 interchanges on the H.E. Bailey, 1 on the Cimarron, and 1 on the Indian Nation that we're ready to get into design on. The last priority, it's the last priority on this list, but it's taken up a lot of our time, and it's equal to the rest. This was in no particular order, but I usually end up spending quite a bit of time on the new alignments on the south side of the metro, trying to finish the loop. But based on the amount of volume of traffic, the volume of traffic growth, and if anybody in here, if you're from Tulsa, congestion is 75 south of Tulsa, I think. And if you're from Oklahoma City or drive south I-35, everybody in here, I think, would agree that that is the most congested location in probably the state of Oklahoma. Right, Dawn? That has to drive it every day. It is, and there's no good alternative. ODOT started widening that in the late 1970s, finished it a handful of years ago, just a few years ago now, and the widening is complete and it's congested again. So it's time to do something else. That the development that's happened along the sides of it, I think Brian would tell you that there's no way that it's feasible to go in and add additional capacity, additional lanes, and we're going to work really hard with the Department of Transportation to optimize the interchanges that exist, and but the real need there is for an alternative route, something that can pull some of that traffic off and around, where they're just trying to get partway around or all the way around the city, we've got to work on that. So that's part of Access Oklahoma. And I wanted to show the latest map. If you haven't seen our website, this map is updated by the color codes are yellow, blue, and orange. Orange is under construction, so that little orange up there toward Tulsa is where the widening project is going on right now. A couple other projects are ones at Stroud and ones at Wellston on the Turner. Those are our active construction projects. The yellow is everything that's active currently in active design. And they're in all different phases of design, but I'll tell you over the course of the last couple weeks and the end of the next month or so, we're going to receive somewhere around 35 to 40 sets of 60% plans for everything that's in that yellow. So that's where we are engineering-wise. I give that partly as an update to my ODOT friends that know that they've been asking for a few things from some designers, and we're wondering why, from some consultants and things. We're tapping the resources. Sorry, Justin. And we're about to put some more under design with this next solicitation. I just want to show briefly the latest update. You may have heard a few weeks ago, and we've been working with the city of Norman for several years on, we're going to build a turnpike and what do they want it to look like. And one of the things that we know would provide the most connectivity, the most opportunity for Norman and more is one-way frontage roads and interchanges everywhere that we could fit them in. So that's the direction that we headed based on some of those discussions with city staff. And we got to the point where, we needed to get a resolution, needed to get an agreement, because we can't go build frontage roads and interchanges and then force somebody else to take ownership and take maintenance of them. And you don't want me maintaining a frontage road because we'll never get to it. Our priorities are on the main line. So in that resolution that came up just a couple of weeks ago for the city of Norman to pass, that resolution was basically the city council directing city staff to go work with the Turnpike Authority, figure out an agreement that you'd bring back in front of us on how we would take over maintenance of some of these service roads in the future. The motion that they had in that city council meeting was to reject the resolution, which was to reject the frontage roads and the interchanges. And that's terribly unfortunate. For me as a transportation professional, I've been doing this for 20-something years now in one way or another. I know that that's a big opportunity lost because while we're coming through doing this major construction, buying right-of-way, moving utilities, it'd be good to get things like this done right now. Based on that conversation, based on that resolution rejection, we updated the map to take out what's being shown on here as single-line frontage roads and single-line interchange ramps and single-line main line to look something more like this. It's a great reduction it's a tremendous reduction in the amount of property that is necessary for this section. I think we had 52 homes that were in this part that we're designing right now, and this reduced that down to 39, so it's 13 properties we won't have to negotiate any right-of-way for, so that is a positive. I get that. Property acquisition is one of. Depending on the day, it might be the most serious thing that we do. Going to somebody who did not ask to be contacted, and we're the government, even though I'm only the government 8 or 10 hours out of the day. We're with the government, we're here to help, right? And we show up and we're asking somebody to make a sacrifice, have to move maybe when they didn't want to, for the betterment of our state and for future increased traffic so that you can order things on Amazon and get them tomorrow or today so that all of us can have a better society to live in. We're asking people to make that sacrifice. That's pretty darn serious. It's one of the things that, I don't know what the K value is in some of the curves, but I know the name of every property owner that we purchase property from. TJ and I track that every week. We know the story behind everybody, and we follow that right-of-way acquisition process all the way through because it is super serious, and we want to make sure that Todd and Rhonda and Dane are doing a really good job, and they do. They do an outstanding job because we're all Oklahomans. We have neighbors that have had to make a sacrifice like this, and so we want to do everybody right and do the right thing. Reducing the right-of-way need in this segment can be seen as a positive. It's going to have long-lasting effects. I think as soon as the project is done, I don't think it's when the city asks for frontage roads and interchanges. I think it's when. I don't think it's if. I think it's when. So it's going to be a bigger challenge to do that someday in the future. And we'll continue to work with Norman. If they change their minds or if there are other opportunities, we're obviously going to try to leverage resources where we can and partner on those things. I was just told I have 5 more minutes, so I will take 2 questions or something really fast if there's something I didn't touch on that anybody wants to ask. You got a question you want to ask? Oh, got one. Yes, sir. Do we have plans for construction next year? So TJ's just got pale. So our commitment, let me put it this way. I mean, we're working really feverishly hard on getting something ready to go on the Turner Turnpike for some additional, whether it be replacing some of those short, narrow bridges, both narrow on top and narrow underneath, with new bridges where we can get utilities out of the way quick. There are locations throughout our network that don't have utilities in the way at all, so it's just getting plans. So we've got several projects lined up that may be ready to go this next year. TJ would also probably tell you that as far as new alignment stuff, it's probably late next year, possibly early, at the latest, early 26 that we'd be needing to get that done, because our commitment in our bond documents is that we would have that very first segment between I-44 and I-35 open to traffic by the end of 2027. So that's what we're working at, and that's a lot of work to get done, and that's why there are a few design folks in the room that are going to leave here in just a few minutes to go get back to work. And if they're not gone, I'm going to make sure I'll help them walk out. So we need those projects done. I'm just kidding. I really am just kidding. But yeah, we have more work that's coming. Because of these improvements that we're doing on the Turner and some of these others, it's freeing up some of our capital plan money to do shoulder rehabs, pavement replacements, so a lot of bridge rehab projects that we have out there, because our bridges have been in service, some of them for 50 or 60 years, and they need a new deck, and approaches need some work. So we're working on things like that. It's a good question. Thank you. Anything else? Well, I really do appreciate getting to be here and give everybody an update, and hopefully I armed you with just a little bit of information so that when you're at church or at the grocery store or someplace or at the dinner table over the holidays, and somebody says, don't you work on highways and you know anything about the turnpike system, maybe you can answer a few questions for us that help tell the story of transportation in our state. Thank you guys very much.